This is Pete Moore on Halo Talks NYC. I have a fellow New Yorker joining us today. We're going to talk about living an active lifestyle in the city, curated for optimization. Mike Riordan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Pete. Super happy to be here.
Awesome. So, we've been saying that communities that are based on solving loneliness, diabetes, and obesity is the future. Getting people out of the house, and also, when they're on trips, they are actually, doing their routines or finding new routines. So talk about how you kind of stumbled across this. Was it a personal frustration that you went to new cities and you kind of were looking for someone to help you do that?
It's actually kind of a combination of that, where I would go away somewhere. One time I was actually in Hawaii and I went to go to the gym and there was a line of people waiting to run on the treadmill. And I was like, well, what am I doing? Right? I'm in Hawaii. Why would I waste my time in the actual gym when I can go run on the beach and, up in the hills and all that stuff? And I did it. And it was one of the greatest runs I've ever taken in my life. Right. And then as I was working as a personal trainer, a lot of my clients were traveling for business. And whenever they would come back from somewhere really cool, whether it was Bermuda or Chicago, whatever, I was always like, oh my God, how was it? And answer was always the same. It was that they were there for work and they didn't get to actually see anything local or do anything that was really like a local experience. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. And then I'd ask if they actually did get to work out. And the answer was always, they would come back with, well, I went down to the fitness center and ran on the treadmill for 10 minutes, felt about how bad it sucked, and then went and got another croissant and a cup of coffee and got ready for my sales meeting. I was like, yeah, okay, well, that's a bummer. And then I started thinking about how many people are actually coming to New York City and having that same exact experience, where they're stuck in a trade show booth or in a conference room or whatever. And I did a quick look to see if anybody was doing anything that was fitness focused for travelers and visitors to the city. And
how long ago did you start this up?
This was in 2014, so we're just coming up on 10 years.
Congrats.
Thanks.
We did a interview with ABC Financial, and they said that they were a 34-year overnight success. So, got to build value over time. As you look at the space, obviously, people are coming here. It's not necessarily a recurring revenue business, but I saw on your site that you've got, a run in Central Park or the Cherry Blossoms tour or Brooklyn Bridge and run through Chicago. Are you actually have employees? Do you have trainers that you're affiliated with? And then you've got a $40 to $50 price point. So tell us kind of how that all came about and how your network works.
Sure. So when it first started, I was actually leading all of the tours myself, and then got to the point where an old injury started to really act up, and my ankle was killing me. So it forced me to, go out and reach out to some other people who could be tour guides for me. And then the other thing, in addition to the running tours, we also offer what's called the yoga walk. For people who aren't runners, they can actually do something healthy and active and get outside to start off the morning. And I went and hired a number of different certified yoga instructors to come on board and do something different than just their typical in the studio sort of yoga experience. And so I started having this team that sort of came together. They all work as independent contractors. And it's been, one of the greatest things that I did, specifically also because when we have corporate groups that come into town, we can handle larger groups of 50 to 100 people because I have a team and we can break that large group up into smaller groups. So I've got, tour guides can handle each of those smaller groups.
I went on your site. I was pleasantly surprised how many dates you have events going on. I mean, it's basically a daily event business is what you're running. When you take a look over the last 10 years of, Class Pass, Gym Pass, some of these other groups that are basically providing access to bricks and mortar, have you delved into that as part of the business? Are you kind of focused on, hey, this is an outdoor experiential. I want you to be outside. I'm not trying to create a curated fitness studio experience or like a bar crawl, if you will, if we want to go back to, the negativity of alcohol. But to talk about why you decided to just kind of stick to this component of the business and maybe it's part of the experience and like what you get out of it.
Well, that really is what it is. It's an immersive experience for visitors to New York City that's focused on wellness.
Mm-hmm.
And for us to go ahead and become another fitness studio, that really wasn't our business model or idea at all. This was specifically for people who wanted to get to see the city when they were here for whether it was, a leisure travel trip to come into town and explore as much as you possibly could in a short amount of time, or if you were here on business and you had a very little bit amount of time to do, anything that was a local flavored experience. So, and you kind of touch on something with that, right? As if we were to open a studio that had just pictures of New York City all around it, it's still a studio. And that makes us, it's one of the things that I learned early on was that the identity of the Fit Tours business is that we are actually a tour company with a fitness twist as opposed to a fitness company with a tour twist.
Got it.
And when that clicked, that's sort of like the path kind of opened up for how we got business.
Gotcha. I guess the second part of the question is, do people request and say, hey, I want to do an outdoor tour, but I also want to do can you curate a solid core class? Can you get us into Barry's boot camp? Does that ever become part of the conversation where you're basically giving them like a fitness, 3 or 4 days, test out other types of indoor and outdoor?
Sure. So we do have people who are in town, whether it be specifically to run a half marathon or the marathon, right? And they're looking for stuff in addition to just the touristy part. They want to have like a curated fitness and wellness schedule.
Gotcha.
And we've been able to, deal with whether they be massage therapists or stretch labs or, any different type of thing. They certainly ask us that a lot.
So when you take a look at over the last 10 years, obviously you could go to, you start with a whiteboard. You say, okay, I can partner with hotels. I can partner with travel agents. I can go direct. I can find instructors that have a lot of people coming in from out of town. How did you think about, and, without giving away the special sauce of how you fill up these classes outside, and I can see on a schedule, you got a lot of classes and a lot of people, attending, for an entrepreneur who's starting out and saying, hey, I'm kind of starting from the bottom, and, a lot of this is guerrilla marketing and relationship building. So what are some of the things you can say, hey, this is what I've learned. I always use this term, experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. So what are some avenues you said, hey, this might be a great idea, but actually it doesn't work that way? Maybe it's a health club saying like, hey, when people come in for a day pass, also offer them an outdoor, experience with us. Well, what's worked and what hasn't, if you could give us a little bit of wisdom.
Sure. And listen, that there was, at the very beginning, it is throwing out as wide a net as possible because everybody wants to come join us, right? If I build it, they'll come. The whole,
Right.
thing, Field of Dreams. And it really has been, for example, I thought walking into hotels and speaking to hotel concierges was going to be my path to buying a yacht because that was just made so much sense, right? But the thing that was a real hard lesson to learn real quick was that what we do is very different and it never really existed before. So when I would meet a hotel concierge, they would always say to me, what a great concept. We love this idea. We'll call you when somebody asks for it. And that was really hard to hear every time because I know that nobody knows that we existed. So nobody knew to ask for it. And the big thing that I had to do then was find out where we were going to get people who were going to be able to actually embrace it and then be a billboard for it, to like talk it up. And that was hard. That's the real learning curve in this whole entire thing, was finding the people who could bring us business. And, that was a few hotels. It was more about corporate groups and that sort of thing.
Interesting. Lesson we talked about was the price point. So on your website, Mike, I see it's somewhere between 41 to 49, per event, which is, probably a little bit higher than a studio, but, lower than taking a cruise or a tour around on a sunset to Statue of Liberty. It's, at an interesting price to maybe not give it away, but also to say, hey, there's a lot of value here and you're going to pay for that value and that experience and that curation. So how did you stumble upon that? And were there iterations to that?
So my initial thought was to put it at a similar price point to any of the fitness studios. And quite honestly, when we, were getting going, it ended up costing me money because I would pay, I like to pay my tour guides a decent amount of money for doing, the tours, because it is not like working at a studio where all of a sudden you've just got like clients back to back or classes back to back. We do it, once or twice in the morning, and then you're on your own, you're off to do whatever you do. So we needed to make it where it was going to be sustainable, where we could actually, keep it at a fairly inexpensive cost to our guests, but also make it so that we weren't just bleeding out money every time we got someone, and then hoping that we, would get more than one or two people at a time. And so that's really the main reason that we came upon that.
And when you have people that are basically representing your brand, but not full-time employees, how much training or, call outs are you forcing? There's groups out there that, as an analogy, a studio wants to present a certain, experience with their brand. They also have instructors that want to have their own personality and vibe to it. So how do you kind of manage that? Obviously people are outside. So is there headphones that they're talking, or are they shouting, or, what are some of the things that are like nuances to this?
So one of the things that probably the smartest move I ever did in my hiring practice was to go to find actors and performers. And one of the main reasons was when I first started the business, I, hired a bunch of my friends who were trainers, who I knew were like total badasses in the studio. But then when they get out to Central Park and they're, meeting people that they've never met before, all of a sudden they would kind of freeze up. And I'm feeling like, who are you? Like, what happened? And I just realized it's a completely different setting. It's a completely different, situation. And so I needed to find people who were performers. And there's a website called Backstage, which used to be just a newspaper for actors. And now it's just a big website. And I could, post a job, and I would always put up front, like, this is not an acting gig, but we're looking for fitness focused tour guides. And, I would get a ton of people back, and I'd sift through, and all of a sudden I would find these absolute superstars who were full of life and energy and could take not the script that we would give them, but the information, right? The basic information and history about Central Park, for example. They could take it, make it their own, and make it an entertaining discussion, right? To talk with people. And the biggest part is that they be welcoming and friendly people. And in that situation, it becomes a very interactive and social situation, where they're talking and they're loud and they can project because they're actors and all that stuff. And it's a pretty cool thing to see when that happened. I was like, oh, right, there you go. Of course, actors who want to look good. So they're very fitness focused, and they just naturally are outgoing people. So that really worked well for us.
A lot of groups, when they're in one city, they say, okay, I'm going to go to the next city. I'm not sure which one it's going to be. In New York, maybe you're going to, Philly or Boston, and just kind of, go into adjacent larger urban areas. I see you went to Chicago. How much of that is, your comfort and knowledge of a city versus, hey, I did a lot of research. This is what the research tells me, and this is where I'm going to go.
Yeah, great question. So one of the things and the reasons that we started with Chicago, which is a city that I absolutely love, was that during the pandemic, when travel was shut down, the world was shut down, on a Facebook group of international running tour operators, there was a guy who posted that he was looking to sell his business. And I was like, well, all right, well, here's an opportunity to take over a Chicago-based running tour company. Gave him a call. We had really similar philosophies, and he was just getting really busy with another side business, a tour company that he was doing. And he just basically gave it to me. And so that was super exciting. One of my best friends lives in Chicago. He's in the hotel meeting planning world. And so I reached out to him. So what do you think of this? He's like, I'm all in. Let's do it. So that was sort of an easy fit. Went out there a couple times and fell in love with the city more, got to know the city better. and just started to create, running routes and the yoga walk courses that I thought would be great. And then started hiring, locals and started getting their feedback, and it went from there.
It's funny. My next question was going to be, how do you value a business like that? And what would you pay for it? So getting the keys is always a great option. So it sounded like this guy just wanted to make sure that his baby did not stop breathing, and someone to basically take it over. I think that might be a lesson for some of the entrepreneurs that are out there that get into the sector. Maybe things aren't working out as planned, and if someone's willing to take over your lease and some of your obligations, that might be considered a win. So that's really interesting.
And one thing, sorry to interrupt, but one thing that really facilitated that whole opening in Chicago was something that happened last year that I'm super excited about. And this, I think, could be a good lesson for people as well who might be struggling and looking for creative, out of the box kind of ideas. Right before the pandemic, my only competitor in New York City was a company called City Running Tours. And the owner, a guy by the name of Michael Riordan, reached out to me and, just introduced himself, said he saw that, what I was doing, thought it was great, and suggested we get ready, meet up for a coffee and just discuss, the state of the industry kind of thing. And so once I got past my, leave the gun, take the cannoli kind of moment, like, why does this guy want to meet me? Right? We just hit it off really well, had very similar philosophies of what we wanted our business to be. And we ended up working on a couple of projects together, got to the point where we would lend each other running tour guides and stuff. And after, when the pandemic hit, we continued to work on some projects. And when everything started to come back, we were just, found ourselves working on the same thing, butting our heads. And then, finally it just came up. It's like, why are we doing this, going after the same people and all that? Why don't we just merge our businesses? And, once we both kind of sat there, we're like, yeah, it just makes sense. So my original company was Fit Tours NYC. His was City Running Tours. And we've recently become City Fit Tours. And that has been a really, really great thing, because when you are an entrepreneur and, the owner of a small business, you are doing everything, absolutely everything. And that's hard, all the different hats that you wear. And if you can bring in someone, and I was incredibly lucky to do that, to meet with someone who, one, I get along with really well, has similar philosophies, and we are, we were doing basically the same thing, but we're different enough where it was an opportunity for both of us to grow our business, and merging our businesses together was a great idea, and it's moving really well.
And following on to that, have you guys given yourselves different titles? Are titles important in your business?
We call ourselves co-founders.
Okay.
And, it just organically sort of fell into what our roles were going to be, right? So he's more of an operations guy, and I'm way more of a business development guy. And that has obviously been great. So he's handling more of the, the day-to-day stuff with our tour guides and scheduling and things like that. And then I'm getting out there, able to meet with, or spend time on LinkedIn, for example. This Sunday, I'm going out to a travel industry expo in Chicago. So I'll be out there for a few days and just meeting people and doing all that stuff. And knowing that he can manage all this stuff here while I'm gone is fantastic. And so it's just, sharing the workload has been a really, really great thing for us together.
That's great. And the last question is, as you see a lot of convergence of, healthcare, health insurance companies trying to get people outside, you got pickleball, you've got people training for specific events. How do you kind of look at that and say, I'm sitting on a database that has all these people that are, active lifestyle enthusiasts, but I'm not really actually trying to mine them for something else. I'm providing experience. I'm holding true to my brand. And if you come in from business school and tell me what to do, that sounds great on paper, but I'm running my business the way I want to run it, and I'm making money profitably, and this is what I want to do. Do you get sometimes people come to you and say, oh, I would do this with the business, or, I would go to 50 states and 50 cities and go raise some venture capital money. I'm assuming you and your partner would just say, hey, thanks, appreciate the idea, but like, we're not working for anybody but ourselves. So maybe give the argument to say, hey, look, you could do that and get on your own treadmill, which is going to be a disaster at some point. Or we're going to do it our way. We're going to do it outside. We're going to provide experiences, and that's going to lead to, repeat business or additional business.
Right. Yeah. So it is, we get that call at least 3 times a week, right? Where people are saying, hey, we can help you grow the business if you just did it this way. And, we're pretty thick-headed, and we see all the 5-star reviews that we get. Everybody, calls us, and when we, get out there and are on the actual tours, having people say to our faces, this has been the highlight of my trip to New York City, or the highlight of my trip to Chicago. We know we're doing it right? Yep. And the fact that it has been growing steadily, organically, we're we can be patient. Don't get me wrong, we certainly get frustrated often, but we know that we're on the right path, and it's just a matter of a little bit more hard work and sticking with it, being patient, and going from there.
Sounds great. Well, since we're up by you, we'll get together, break some bread, give you some ideas of who we can introduce you to, and you can say yes or no, and we'll go from there. Awesome. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate what you're doing.
You got it. Let's go Rangers.